all of these remains were found. It started with Shannon Gilbert. They found her remains, and when they found her remains, they were looking because she went missing, and she went missing in that area, so they investigated. And when they investigated, they found all these other remains. So then you have to think to yourself, holy cow, who's dumping all these bodies? I mean, it's a perfect place to dump bodies. I mean, if you've ever gone down that road, and I'm sure everybody has, the vegetation there is so dense that there's no way you can walk through there unless you make a great effort. So they also found that some of the victims, actually, they only found partial remains, and they matched up with remains that were found in Manorville. So somebody was dismembering bodies and putting them. There's a lot of crazy people around. It's estimated by the FBI that there are about 120 active serial killers in the United States at any one given time. Where did all those people who disappear go to? Right? All those kids on the milk cartons and all those people who just go out and never come home. Something happens to them. I think the kids are trafficked. And probably some of the young women are trafficked. But it's scary. Just watch your back. That's all I have to say. But, okay, so this case went cold. They found all these remains, and they really didn't have, they didn't know where to go with it, and it went cold. And then finally we got a new head prosecutor in Suffolk County, and he decided to reopen it and bring in the FBI. And what they did, now this is DNA, and we talked about it, but by the time they got to the DNA, what really led them to Huerman was cell phones. Okay, he used burners. Okay, burners are phones that you buy. They have no identification except a serial number, and actually, not everybody knows this, but you know the cell towers that transmit your messages, they store all the information from the phone messages that you're sending. That's how they found the Boston Marathon bomber. Okay, they found him through his cell phone, and they call it pinging, P-I-N-G-I-N-G. And what they do is they triangulate. They find the message in all of the cell phone towers that are close to where you made that phone call, and they triangulate and they find the location. I mean, I remember the Boston Marathon case simply because it was so well mapped out for you when they finally caught him, how they did it, and how they found him right in the boat he was hiding in. Okay, so, well, they did the same thing with Huerman, because what they did was, these girls were all sex workers, and so they all had like a website that they worked from. And so they found his information on some of their websites, and then what they did was they started to look into phone records. And so what they did was they found that most of the traffic that they were interested in hovered around Massapequa Park and a office building in Manhattan. And he was an architect, he worked in Manhattan, okay? So when they put the two together, along with the other information, and that gave them the location of his home in Massapequa Park. So, and then what they did was, of course, once they arrested him, they isolated and cordoned off and whatever the house and crime scene unit came from Nassau County, Suffolk County, New York State, FBI. They all I was dying to go talk to them. I said, never let anybody near, I mean, that would be compromising the evidence, but boy, I would have liked to have talked to them. I only went by there once, because once I saw how it was, I said, and then I went by at Christmas time. Why? Oh, because my son lives in Maryland. He said, I have to see this house. I think I remember it because he grew up in this. We went by and they had Christmas lights, and we found that odd. But at any rate, that's, again, they used DNA, but they used the DNA after they arrested him, and they used it to really go over. No, actually, they found the DNA before before they arrested him. They used that as corroborating evidence because they were secretly going through his garbage. But then after that, I mean, they dug up his basement, they dug up the backyard. I would not have liked to have been one of his neighbors because it was a mess for a while. But we'll see. And of course, we'll all be glued to the trial when it finally happens, correct? We're all going to be watching that trial. And this was like, in fact, I should have really mentioned it. I'll mention it quickly. Do you remember Kellyanne Tinya's case? Okay, that was the first case tried on Long Island when they used DNA evidence, but they used expert witnesses, and they made the DNA evidence so complicated that the jury was like kind of turned off by it. And so what had happened was Michael Gallo brutally murdered her, and he bit her. And so there were bite marks on the body. So they, and then of course they had taken impressions of his teeth. And so finally when the jury was deliberating, they said, okay, the DNA evidence, please bring us the pictures of the bite marks and bring us the cast of his teeth. And that's how they made the match, and that's how they convicted him. So, but that was the first case tried on Long Island using DNA. And I was teaching forensic science at the time, and we watched part of the trial, and it was really like so hard to try to understand what those expert witnesses were saying because they use very technical terms. So I hope when I explain this to you, it made some sense. Okay, so there we go. Questions? Yes.